Hey everyone, Andy Raffel from eTeknix.com, and today we're going to be looking at the 10th gen Intel HEDT processors. And yes, we are a day early. Let's do this. Make your build stand out with the new Team Group Delta RGB memory. Available in black or white, capacities up to 32 gig and speeds up to 3200 MHz. With a multitude of lighting effects supported by all major motherboard brands, the Team Group Delta RGB is guaranteed to make your build look cooler than ever. Check the link in the description below to find out more. So before I get started, I want to put a little bit of a caveat in there. We didn't actually receive our samples from Intel, therefore we're not actually bound by any NDA, hence us publishing today on Sunday when the actual launch is Monday, obviously if you are watching this video at the time of us releasing it. So we've actually got two samples today. We've got the 10-core 20 thread and the 14-core 28 thread, whereas most people will have the 10980XE. So let's jump into, a little bit about the specs, a little bit about kind of what's on offer for the 10th gen stuff, and then we can look at them glorious benchmarks. As with the previous processors, this new Core X series of processors is aimed at, creators more so than gamers, as well as enthusiasts, people who really want to get the most out of their components. Now, this does actually encompass, two ranges within this range of X series processors, the Extreme range and then the X series, which I still find a little bit odd because there is actually only one processor, which is the 10980XE, which is actually branded under the Extreme range. Everything else is just, well, your typical X series. Now with the new X series range of processors, there are a few new features, starting with the fact that they are all unlocked processors and the top end part does have 18 cores and 36 threads, but we'll talk about the specs in just a little bit. Speed-wise, there are speeds up to 4.8 GHz, and there is extra memory support now, so we now have support for 256 GB of DDR4 2933 MHz memory. There's an updated Intel Turbo Boost Max Technology 3.0 and Intel Deep Learning Boost. Now all SKUs do also have 72 PCI Express lanes, which means that you're going to have extra bandwidth for your graphics cards as well as any other add-in cards that you may want to put in there. There is also a 2.5G Intel Ethernet controller included and support for Intel Wi-Fi 6 AX200. Now within this new Core X series range, there are 4 processors in total. One of them is the Extreme Edition, the 10980XE, and if you're watching this at the time of us uploading this video, that will be probably the one that everyone's going to be reviewing tomorrow. Now the ones that we've got are the 10940X, which is a 14-core 28-thread processor, operating at 3.3 GHz and boosting up to 4.8 GHz. We've also got the i9-10900X, which is the 10-core 20-thread, which operates at 3.7 GHz and boosts up to 4.7. That's a 10-core 20 thread. They all have, as I mentioned, up to 72 PCI Express 3.0 lanes, so still a little bit behind AMD. They all have the same L3 cache apart from the Extreme Edition, and they're all 165 watt TDPs. Now pricing wise, on the 14 core, we're looking at $784 US, and on the 10 core, $590, making it, that more achievable part if you're currently on the consumer level stuff and want to move up to HEDT. So specs wise, it looks pretty impressive on paper. 165 watt TDP does look, a little bit on the high side, but these are aimed at a certain market. And that market really is down to workstation, rendering, that kind of stuff. I'm guessing even before, looking at the benchmarks, you guys are going to agree with me. This isn't going to be aimed for gamers, and you'll see exactly why. Now, a lot of people ask me about the test bench that we use for these tests. Now, we do actually record this on eTeknix.com, and the link to the review of these processors is in the description below. For the sake of this video, we're using the Asus ROG Rampage 6 Extreme Omega motherboard. We're using the various CPUs that we've tested, and to keep it nice and cool, we're using the Corsair H150i Pro RGB. In terms of memory, we're using 32 gig of Team Group Nighthawk RGB memory, and we're using a 1080 Ti from Gigabyte Aorus. In terms of storage, we're using a single 1TB WD Black NVMe drive. So let's take a look at them glorious benchmarks. a little bit about overclocking. Now with the i9-10940X, we were actually able to get this up to a solid 5 GHz. It did require a voltage of around 1.275, and anything lower actually caused a few problems with stability. We was able to get it up to 5.1 GHz and even just a little bit beyond that, but it did require 1.4 volts, and by doing this, it meant that the temperatures literally skyrocketed to around 107, 108 degrees Celsius. When it came to the i9-10900X, I was actually expecting slightly better results because it is obviously a lot less cores, but sadly we was only able to get up to 4.9 GHz at, again, 1.275 volts. 5 GHz was possible and we were able to boot into Windows, but stability just wasn't there, and I wasn't happy about increasing that voltage beyond 1.275. So figure-wise, when it comes to the benchmarks, I do want to make one thing clear. Some of our benchmark results are, I guess, on the older side, and we are planning to do a complete revamp for 2020. So we are going to be obviously looking at, I guess, this chip among other chips with a little bit more scrutiny, adding in more benchmarks, adding in more software suites, more games, all of that kind of good stuff. Now, you saw straight away that, I guess for the most part, let's compare Intel to Intel. If you're looking at gaming, stick with, I mean, you could see the 8700K is still an absolute beast when it comes to gaming performance. These aren't aimed at gaming performance in general, so I guess if you are a gamer, this is completely out of your realm. If you're one of them people a bit like me, where I guess you could utilize the cores and the speed and kind of, you know, the level 3 cache that you get with these processors when it comes to rendering, workstation related tasks, but you're also a gamer, then I'm sorry, I'm going to have to recommend AMD. Now, this isn't me being an AMD shill, because Threadripper is actually launching on the 25th of this month as well for the 3rd gen stuff, and we haven't got them either. So I've got no allegiance to say good things about Intel or AMD, so you're going to have to take this as being completely unbiased. Now, when I actually look at, I guess, the previous generation stuff, again, looking at the benchmarks, you can see some of the 7th gen Intel stuff. So, you know, the likes of the 7740X is performing pretty much very, very close to this. And that's when we have to look at pricing. Now, pricing for this is a bit of a weird one, because essentially you can still use your X299 platform. So if you're already on X299 and you're running the 7th gen, or you're running one of the, I don't know, 9980XEs, you're probably not, but if you are running something around them kind of realms, is there any reason to upgrade to this? Well, I mean, it's going to save you money in the fact that you don't have to buy a new motherboard. Comparing that against the AMD Threadripper 3rd generation, yes, you're going to have to buy a new motherboard, and from what we've seen already, they are going to be, I guess, a little bit more on the expensive side compared to X299, but you are going to get a lot more for your money. You're going to get PCI Express Gen 4 just for, you know, starters. You are going to get a lot more PCI Express lanes depending on the processor that you actually go for. Yes, these do offer up a decent amount of PCI Express lanes, but what does that really mean in the grand scheme of things? Again, going back to rendering and workstation, it means a lot. For the average consumer, it means absolutely nothing. When it comes to overclocking, yes, we were able to get some pretty decent results. We were actually able to push it further, but it did kind of require a lot more voltage, and therefore that kind of led to us getting stupid temperatures of close to 110 degrees at load. So where do we go from there? What is the point of this chip? Well, I'm going to be honest. It seems like Intel have fallen down the rabbit hole that I guess AMD did with their GPUs, and it's a refresh of a refresh of a refresh. There's nothing really new here. There's no PCI Express 4.0 technology. There's a few, I guess, Intel-based boosting technologies, but when it comes to that, I mean, what does that really mean? Compared to AMD, it seems like Intel kind of fighting a losing battle. And I guess the only people who are really going to win from that battle are going to be the consumer. We said this about kind of typical Ryzen stuff on the consumer level. HEDT, I honestly thought was going to maybe claw something back for Intel. But in my kind of, I guess, final thoughts for this, just seems like, I don't know, AMD have got the upper hand at the moment, especially when it comes to price versus performance. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. And yeah, I guess I will see you guys in the next one. Bit of a weird one, bit of a hollow kind of video, but you guys wanted the performance and here it is. So yeah, until next time guys, see you later. Bye bye.